Every time you go cruising, you learn something, right? Well, I do. Hi, I'm Nika Waters, and welcome to the Boat Galley Podcast. Today I'm sharing 3 things that I wish I'd known before I went cruising the first time, in hopes of giving you something to think about before you go. Today's episode of the Boat Galley Podcast is sponsored by Rainman Watermakers and SeaTask. Rainman Watermakers are capable of producing up to 37 gallons of fresh, clean drinking water per hour from seawater. Portable and installed models are available, all with off-the-shelf parts. Configurations are available in AC, 12-volt DC, and even a gasoline system, with new 2019 models being smaller, lighter, and quieter than ever. SeaTask is the premier U.S. facility for Rainman Watermakers. Visit them at www.seataskgroup.com to learn more. That's SeataskGroup.com. Right now, we're in the process of getting our kids launched and off to college and prepping for big cruise number 3. I look back on the cruises that we've done. The first we went without the kids for 3 years in the Eastern Caribbean. And then the second cruise that we did, we took with the kids. We're taking the same boat that we did back then. We've had it for over 25 years. But I look back on those 2 cruises and think about how they went as we're getting ready to go for this next one. It's pretty easy, even having lived on the boat and cruised, to look back and just kind of pretend that the bad stuff didn't happen. There are some challenging realities to cruising. Like weather, it's more immediate, both the good and the bad. When it's dumping rain or it's blowing like stink, sometimes it's really much more than just an inconvenience. It can make it really hard to go places or to do the things that you wanted to do. It's not just a matter of changing the clothes that you have. And conversely, when it's spectacularly beautiful out there, you probably are really hoping that your bimini or your awning is working just the way you want it to so that you have the shade that you want. Another reality is that sand gets everywhere. If you like beaches, be prepared for sand in places that you didn't really realize could have sand. We're pretty diligent and try to keep stuff out of the boat, but we're not 100% successful. If you are, will you please let me know some of your ideas? Getting from point A to point B isn't just a matter of putting down the course that you want to take and go that direction. You've got to deal with the wind and the wind direction. You have to deal with currents and tides, and maybe you need to time it so that the sunlight is right so you can see where you're going. That certainly is the case in a lot of the Bahamas. You have to be aware of shipping. One of the things that's the hardest for a non-cruiser to understand is how slow life on the water is. Even if you're a super fast sailboat, you might not be going a whole lot more than 8 or 9 knots, whereas a land dweller, 60 miles an hour is pretty much the way you go. 60 miles, that's not a big deal if you're living on land, but for a cruiser, that's a really long day's travel if you can do it in a day. But I will say, and that's not totally the point of this podcast, every single challenge that I just mentioned, there's a response to it. And it's a response that, to me, puts it on the positive side. So if the weather's bad, well, then you're stuck in some really cool little towns or small isolated anchorages. And you get to fill your time by exploring the latest muffin recipe that you can find in whatever cookbook you happen to have brought with you. Or you just get some extended time to read and look at the birds. Fine. If you've got sand, that probably means you've been on a beach. And I have to tell you, looking for sea glass and shells and sea beans, that's my favorite thing to do. And yeah, it takes a long time to get from one place to another, but after you've been traveling, there's something extra super sweet about landfall after a night passage, or a sunrise at sea, or waking up to a new anchorage. So yeah, I think those challenges all can be answered. But the point of the podcast today actually doesn't have anything to do with any of those things that I just talked about. They're more about things that I've learned in my time, some of them with some stories that could be associated with them. But I have 3 tips that I want to share with you, and these are things that I wish that I'd known before I went cruising. Number 1, don't forget to fill your water tanks every single chance you get. Even if you have a water maker, full water tanks is the most incredible source of richness that you could possibly imagine. You don't understand how incredible it is to have full water tanks. Number 2, cruising is way more social than you can imagine. One of the things you can do to get ready to go is to learn how to make your favorite appetizer and make sure that you can stock the ingredients for them. And invite away. Ask people to come over. It doesn't matter if you know them or don't know them yet. Don't be afraid to invite them to come and join in your favorite appetizers. I will say, don't think that your boat is too small. Calypso's usually the smallest one in the whole anchorage. Or that it's too old, ditto, or anything else. Just invite people to come over. And when somebody invites you over, say yes and ask what you can bring. And maybe it's going to be that favorite appetizer. And the third thing I wish somebody had told me before I went cruising, which is a total contrast to the second one that I just shared. Cruising can be really, really lonely. It's super hard to go from your long cultivated support system in your neighborhood and your job and your family and your friends who are close by to an existence where you're largely responsible for absolutely everything, from water to electricity to cooking to cleaning to everything to internet. You're largely responsible for that yourself. If you're cruising with a partner, communication. Communication. Did I mention communication? It's so easy in this day and age of social media and Facebook to be able to post your woes about what your life is like on that social media platform. But before you choose to do that, make sure that you're also taking the time to talk to the person who's right there with you. Nobody can read minds. Nobody can. Even though we sometimes think we know somebody well enough to read their mind a little bit, you can't. When in doubt, talk about it. Communicate. It's really better. I can't wait to see you out there with your full water tanks, sharing my favorite appetizer with you in some wonderful anchorage we don't know about yet. Have a fabulous week. Thanks so much for listening to the Boat Galley podcast. We've got an episode that comes out every Monday and every Thursday, trying to answer all questions and maybe a little bit of inspiration about the cruising life and to help you get out there. Have you subscribed yet or shared it with a friend? Let us know if there's something we can answer for you, because we're always happy to help. Talk to you soon.